Hey, this is Steve Orlando, back again for the second talk in my interview series that we're calling Who's Got the Juice? Working with my friends at PM Spirits, formerly my employer, before I broke into my current life as a comic book writer, lately, I guess, internet thirst trap personality as well. So we're just going to be talking to folks I know from different industries, as we did last time with my friend Dan Housen. Today, we have one of my friends that I met on the road, Jen Cohn, voice actress, eccentric, and ever of opinions worldwide. Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we can get into it.
Steve Orlando. I love that intro. That was a very happy intro. Hi, I'm Jen Cohn. I am best known as a voice actress and best known for the character Pharah in OVERWATCH. I also am known as the voice of Lord Zash in Star Wars The Old Republic, and as Zuko and Azula's mom, Ursa, in Avatar The Last Airbender, among a bunch of other voice credits. And I also am a fashion maven and a fashion stylist advisor, blah, blah. And I do a Twitch live stream twice a week where I sort of bring it all together, where I'm talking to gamers about self-expression and style. And that's at Hey, It's Jen Cohn on Twitch.
So that's sort of perfect because, you know, we're going to be talking, you're bringing together different industries in what you do with your content. And that's a lot about what we're doing with Who's Got the Juice, because I think all of us, you'll find, especially in the creative industries, we're not just one thing. We've all had a strange path bringing us to where we are with the luxury to work in the creative arts, which I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in things, at least myself, I have got to realize it is a luxury. It's a privilege to be able to do these types of creative things, especially now. So the thing that
to make a living as a hyphenate is really a gift. And frankly, like anyone I know who's doing cool stuff tends to have a lot of interests and have their finger in lots of pots. But yeah, being able to do all these cool things is very exciting. And to be able to bring it all together is really exciting.
That's what I should have said. I should have said eccentric hyphenate. And in the future, that's how
I am. I'm a very eccentric hyphenate.
But you know, the thing I found is that we are where we are, but these interests never leave you, right? Like you said, you started on style, now you're doing voice acting, but here you are trying to find a way to bring those interests together, because even though you are these characters in video games and animation, you are still the person you were before. These things are still of vital interest to you. So tell me, you know, before I was in comics, I was a spirits retail and boutique specialist for 10 years. Finally, when it came time where I couldn't balance too much of one without sort of failing the other, I decided I was going to go all in on comics. But like you're saying, you know, these interests never left me. My friends at PM Spirits supported me for a long time before I got all in on comics. That's one of the reasons we're bringing it back around. Talking about what they do, talking about the spirits they put forth, and the sort of the reason that they connected with me so strongly, the reason spirits were so important to me. So here I am doing what it seems like you're already doing, teaming up, combining a lot of your interests that have gotten you where you are. But how did you get there? You know, I was, I mean, like most people in upstate New York, I was a lifeguard, loathing children all the time, yelling, no running. Like many people with an English degree, I immediately did not have a job when I got out of school. So this is how I sort of fell into spirits retail. And over time, because I found it fascinating, honestly fascinating in the same way that I find my current job with working with comic books, working with superheroes, I found them similar because much like, you know, the endless parade of characters that have existed since the 1930s, there's really no basement. You really can't stop learning about spirits. There's always more to know. So I sort of fell into that for the same reason I'd always liked comic books, and it got me through for 10 years until I finally sort of landed working with DC and now being freelance as a writer. So how did you get to where you are? You know, people know you now, you have these things, but I'm sure you had some gigs that are right in line with mine, or at least a reflection of mine on the road to where we are.
Far, far worse. It sounds like you had much more elegant side hustles.
No, I just make it sound elegant.
That's how it sounds, at least. I, from the earliest childhood, had parallel paths. I was always a performer and an actor, and I had a big style streak. And so there was always fashion and performance that were side by side. And so when I was very young, I mean, as a teenager, I had jobs in retail, I had jobs in wholesale, I had a job helping design. My mother was a children's accessories designer. And so I, as like a tiny tot, would go with her to trade shows, and she would send me out with a clipboard and a pad and say, okay, go walk the show and tell me what you see. So I would have to go and I would take notes, and it basically morphed as an adult into what I've done as a trend scout and as a style consultant. Like, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I see coming. It came from my earliest childhood. But I was always in acting school and I was always acting. So my earliest jobs were, I made sunglasses, like super high style, customized sunglasses on themes that people would give me. And I charged a bucket load for it and people paid, which was crazy. I taught acting at a day camp, and that like was supposed to be for someone 10 years older than I was. So that was very fun. And then once I got out, I did dinner theater in Boston, which is a murder mystery cafe. So like near where you are now in Boston. But then I had like a slew of like crazy jobs where I was, oh my God, I was a tour guide on one of those double-decker buses in New York City. I was a terrible waitress. I was an even worse cocktail waitress. A favorite job that I had though, a favorite was I was a liquor promoter sponsor, where I had to be a cute girl, and I had like certain brands that I would go into bars and promote specials about these different drinks. And I'd have to like promote that, oh, you should have this. And I'd sit at the bar and talk to people about this kind of liquor. And I had to do all of these cool trainings. And the ones that we worked with mostly were Dewar's and Tanqueray. And Tanqueray was my dad's beverage. And it was this like really fun, weird job. And as a result, they had me do ads for them. And so then suddenly I'm like blending my acting into what I was already doing. But that was a very fun job. And my main thing, which it sounds like what you're working for, the company you worked for in the alcohol industry was I was a spy for a headhunter for, yeah, which was crazy, for, oh my God, how many years? For 8 years, where I had to like I became an expert on Big Six accounting and Fortune 500 companies and Wall Street and investment banking. And so here I was, this like actress fashion person with this outrageous business acumen, finance acumen. It was I had many interesting gigs.
Well, no one would ever accuse me of having a finance acumen. I promise you.
People were shocked when I did. Like I would meet someone and they would say that they work for Bear Stearns or whatever. And then I'd say, what department? And they'd say the department. And I would say, oh, you're on that new M&A team with blah, blah, blah. And I would know who the boss was. And they'd get all freaked out because here I was like actress fashion girl who knew the specifics. I knew too much information. It was fun. It was good.
Well, that was the surprise in comics when I was first breaking in, because I had been working in spirits for quite some time. And when a lot of folks coming up in the comics industry have only ever really looked to doing that one thing. And so their knowledge is very siloed. So yeah, for me, it was a conversation starter and it was a door opener, because you had this other thing that you could sort of flip the power dynamic. If you're trying to network or things like that, well, now you can explain and you can sort of bring knowledge to the table that the people that you're trying to network with don't have, wouldn't expect you to have. And I think it was a huge boon to me as I was sort of getting my foothold in comics. And I think you've already said a little bit about it, but I think that it's interesting to me always the things we learn from one industry, how you can directly apply them in ways you would never think when you get into another one. So for me, it was the minutia. You know, it's me sitting here being able to name the 6 or 7 people that have worn the Captain America costume, you know, since 1930, whatever. And when I got into spirits, I was like, oh, this is not so, different from being able to name every agave that's in this bottle, or all the different like lesser known regions that are doing single malt. defunct distilleries, things like that. And so this sort of obsession I had with DC and Marvel Comics lore really lended itself when I got into spirits, because that minutia and those details are I think what makes at least craft spirits really, really interesting. So coming up in fashion, did you, and then actually, well, let's go push back further. Were there things when you were doing the spirits gig that did bolster you in fashion, that did bolster you when you got into acting and voice acting in those ways? Because we tend to think of these skills, as I said, as siloed, but they're really not, I don't think.
Well, I think that the only reason I was hired for the spirits gig was because I was already an actress and was personable and was very good at memorizing scripts and new information and details. And at the time I was learning all about which different, how different whiskeys were made and how things were aged and what components were in each liquor I was talking about. And they knew that I was personable. So the having an attractive young actress in that situation promoting their liquors that weren't at that time typically liquors. I mean, at this point, I think it's very common for a young hipster bar-going guy or girl to order a drink with gin in it, or with whiskey in it, or with Dewar's. People might order those drinks, and at that time they weren't necessarily fashionable. Sure. It was before everyone was making artisanal crafted beverages and like beautiful cocktails, and that whole thing wasn't the thing. So those were considered old people drinks, just in the common psyche. And so the idea was, no, let's make this a more fashionable, trendier, younger market share and make this something more attractive to younger people. And so it really worked. I mean, if you see, as is evidenced right now, that you see so many people delving into more interesting and more exciting liqueurs and different kinds of spirits than would have before that.
I think you're right. And I think that actually for me, it's been, the motion has continued to be in parallel to comic books, because I remember, when I go home, I'm from Central New York. When I go home, I'm shocked at the type of sort of craft spirits bars and offerings that are available, whether I'm in Syracuse, whether I'm in Rochester, Albany, most of the bigger cities in upstate. And it's funny as well, because these are things I've known about since I was in my early 20s, but the world is catching up to us in a very exciting way. And it's the same, I'll say, because of superhero TV, with a lot of the things that I've been a fan of since I was a kid. I remember going back to my 10-year high school reunion, and people who were throwing me into lockers in high school were now saying, "Oh my God, do you write for DC? Do you know about Slade? Do you know about Deathstroke?
Right.
Yes, I'm familiar with Deathstroke. Remember when you were kicking my ass because I liked him? But I think it's been that awareness and interest in greater detail with a lot of niche markets. It has been really exciting to see.
The rise of geek culture, the rise of convention culture, the rise of comics. I mean, all of it. Both your two parallel lives have really risen in tandem. I mean, that's a very cool situation to be in.
It's true. If people really started to care about pro wrestling, I'd be unstoppable. But I think I'm going to be getting my ass kicked for that one for a little while longer. So another thing that's really been fascinating to me now, obviously we're both 25, but in our early 20s.
Of course. You just had your 25th birthday.
I did. And
Happy birthday.
I keep having it. But
I know. Good.
The thing that I found when I started working for PM and moving away from sort of like just meeting a bottom line type spirits retail is the social aspect of spirits. I'll just talk for myself. Like when I was in college, I wasn't really considering the greater social aspect of spirits. I was more interested in sort of the ends justifying the means, as someone searching for the Keystone Red can and wondering how to make the flavor of Crystal Palace disappear. No offense, Crystal Palace, if you're watching.
No offense.
Kisses. But the reality is that as your work changes and you change, it becomes, I think, more of a social medium, you know, rather than an end justifying the means. It's now, I have spirits that I associate with certain parts of my life. You know, there's certain things I'll drink with certain people in my family, for example, or you know, it's not necessarily just about ordering a Long Island, which I've certainly never done, and like sitting back. You know, it is a way to begin conversations. It's a way to meet people. It's a way to bring people together. And I look at it a lot differently now. And honestly, I think from a technical standpoint, which you might have seen because you were working on the back end too, it's the difference between, in some ways, the American style of spirits and an old world style of spirits. You know, you have got people that are sort of going for the lowest alcohol possible in some cases when you're looking at wine. And then, you know, this is not necessarily what we're going for in a modern, in a new world style, where you want these Cabernets and things that are almost as alcoholic as fortified wines. Like, there seems to be different ends, different goals in place. Now with liquor, you know, it's almost the opposite. When I got in with PM, I realized that you really had to help people learn about the culture behind drinking the spirit, because a lot of things I was selling were cask strength. And you know, you had to say, well, yeah, because you're not supposed to just be hitting this from the bottle. This isn't a shooter. You want to have it on ice because it's something that's supposed to develop over time. So ideas change, opinions change, perceptions change. How did that happen for you? Because obviously, especially I think once you get behind the curtain, you start to look at how and when and why people will interact with spirits in a new way.
Tell me what the question was. I'm not sure what you were just asking me. I love the point you made, but I don't know who asked.
Attitudes change, right? And I think that, and with that is a greater understanding that I find really interesting. Before I got into the industry, and before I was sort of looking at it in an adult way, I was just trying to party and just trying to have a good time. But the more I started to learn about them, you know, the more I started to see a greater meaning and a greater application. And that's more, you know, sort of what I'm talking about. Like, we're like beyond the general, like, you know, without being too pejorative, like kegger supposition of like, let's just go wild. I think spirits are a really special thing and have a really special place in society. And that's really what I'm asking you about.
I feel like in both of my primary fields, and actually now in sort of all of my pursuits, the perception and the when I was coming up and coming of age, as much as I loved voice acting because I would cartoons and I was a big Mel Blanc fan and I loved all that, that wasn't the ultimate goal. And when I started doing voiceover and saw how terrific a gig voiceover was and how much fun it was, and that I could be as fashionable as I wanted and as avant-garde as I might have wanted, and still be super creative and be present and have to think fast and act, I really took to it and loved it. And in the years since I started my career and my career took off, I feel like I have far more people come up to me and tell me how they want to be a voice actor than I ever had of people coming up telling me that they want to be an actor. Like, being a voice actor became a thing that everybody aspired to because people realized, oh, it's actually a really specific and interesting and terrific field. As well as in fashion, while I wasn't able to put words to it when I was younger, I just sort of was attracted to it as an industry and attracted to quality and attracted to the self-expression of it. I wasn't necessarily looking at it as the canary in the coal mine as it is, and as much of a reflection of the zeitgeist of our society that it is. And that really became the thing about fashion that interests me the most, and trend that interests me the most, and self-expression that interests me the most. Because typically at any given moment, a number of people will all attach onto the same unexpected idea at the same time. And it's just society reflecting something that's going on in our collective subconscious. And I love that. That's the thing I'm always attracted to. That's the thing that really turns me on. And then to take the whole thing forward, you know, I had been told for years about Twitch, which is the platform where I'm doing my stream. And had been told, you know, oh, I really should do something on Twitch. And I just kept thinking, like, Twitch is the gamers. What am I going to do there? I'm not going to be playing. I'm not playing a game. What, I'll just talk. And then realizing that, oh no, this is just a forum where there's this whole community who have connected on this, in this one interest, but they're looking for everything and sort of jumping into this whole hog and meeting this beautiful community of people who are really looking to be met on all levels in this place, in this platform. And particularly since COVID started, seeing people from all different walks of my life, from the fashion sphere, from the design sphere, from the comedy sphere, from all these different non-gaming spheres, all suddenly realizing like, oh, Twitch is actually an incredible place for everyone to convene and an amazing place to discover a new audience and for a new audience to discover a new field. I love those moments where it's like things come together so quickly.
And it sounds like, so to put that in a clean box, which I guess is now my skill. I don't know why, a clean box, strange phrase. Here we are.
I like that. A clean box. Go for it.
It seems to be like when I do these conversations, there a narrative seems to form. This seems to be one about a maturation. It seems to be maturation, you know. And here's why I think that we're mostly talking about whether it's your fashion gig, whether it's your voice acting gig, whether it's the spirits gig, my own experience in comics. As we're in longer, I think we get further and further from our initial expectations of what any of those jobs were going to be and what any of those fields were going to be. And I think that it's a good thing. I mean, like, I have a greater understanding now of what I do, and it's never what you expect. You know, 12-year-old Steve did not think that working in comics was going to be what it was. 22-year-old Steve, who just needed a job, did not think selling spirits was going to be what it ended up being. You know, I ended up being much more of an educator and sort of teammate to my accounts than I really ever thought I would be. So, and I think that from the outside, it's really beautiful to see how with something like fashion, you've taken your own interests and turned yourself into a guide. You know, not just an icon, but you're taking people along the way. You too have become an educator in the way that I did in one of my previous fields. So maturation seems to be, especially against expectation, what we're talking about.
It's funny, much like I might, or to build on what you're saying, I would say that each of these fields has become a real connection point. You know, as much as it might be being an educator, it's a place to connect. They're both places where, on a very human level, on a primal level, people can come together in an intimate, great way. And obviously, spirits are the same way.
And it's been good to see. You know, like I said, the mainstream emergence of everything that I used to get dunked on for, I can't say that I'm sad about it. You know, I mean, I've been telling you guys I'm cool for 20 years, but, you know, here we are. But so that said, I want to bring it around. I want to taste the spirit. We have a Bicuiche mezcal from Neta. It's a small batch distiller in Mexico, in Oaxaca. And what I think is interesting, I said maturation because Bicuiche is an agave. A lot of people don't know, or more people could know, that obviously there are thousands and thousands of types of agave. When you have tequila, you are essentially only having one species that has to be grown in one area, Jalisco, and it's got to be Blue Weber agave. But there's much like wine, like you can mix in mezcal, different varietals, different types of agave, and the flavor can be incredibly diverse. And not all of them mature at the same time. So I'm glad we talked about maturation, because the one thing that I think is fascinating, even more than with wine, you know, grapes generally grow over a season, but some agaves take years and years to mature. And in the case of this one, we're going to sample it right now, but the Bicuiche on average takes 15 years to mature. So in this bottle, Yes, it's small batch. My bottle's 155 out of a run of 240. Yours is probably also something out of 240.
Yeah, it's 152 out of 240.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
So this, to me, what is really special is that, yeah, this is a moment. You know, this bottle is a moment. There's no other bottle other than these 240 that are going to taste like this. You know, these 15 years of weather and soil, it's only going to come together in these bottles. And that's something else that I think is really special with small batch spirits. It's something that I was excited to talk about when I was selling them, because yeah, you know, it just like vintages with wine, when you are bottling something that isn't blended, when it's a single cask, it's a snapshot in time. You know?
So we are talking terroir. I thought we weren't talking terroir. Here we go.
We're talking about it. We're talking about it in a time travel way.
I love it. I love it. It is. It is. It's a snapshot.
So, and I think that's really special. So we can pour to them, but I'm just interested, since it is 15 years old. Where were you 15 years ago? What were you doing?
15 years ago. Was I coming? Hold on a second. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm thinking which birthday it was and what, because my birthday is coming up in a couple of weeks.
25. Right?
Oh, that was a good one. That was great, actually. 15 years ago, my career was about to explode. My voiceover career. Mm-hmm. I was right on the cusp of my career really taking off. I had had the same agents for a handful of years who were good, but I was maturing, I was ripening, and it was about time to decant the bottle. Like, it was right that moment. And I was changing agencies, and I'd started having people say, like, it's time to change agencies. Maybe it's time for you to change agencies. And that was the moment where I was going and meeting with these different agencies, and I was getting these unbelievable responses, and I really got to pick who I was going to go with. And they started saying things to me about, like, oh no, you're going to be a top client. Oh, you're going to be there. And I was like, I didn't know if they were blowing smoke up my, I don't know, am I allowed to say ass? I didn't know if they were blowing smoke up my ass or not, because I was saying, oh my God, this, what's going on here? Because up until then I had been like, scratching and clawing my way to get somewhere. And then suddenly it was like, no, you're a big deal. And I had already begun consulting brands, and I was going regularly with a store to help her buy in Paris at Fashion Week. And this had become a thing I'd been doing for a couple of years already, and I loved it. And so when I was going on these meetings with agents, I was saying to them, look, the other thing I do is fashion consulting. It has to be cool with you that I take off. During New York Fashion Week, I'm busy, and during Paris Fashion Week, I'm in Paris. And so that, and certain agents were like a little like weirded out by the thought of me, or just off the bat saying I'm going to be out of action for that time. But the agents I wound up going with, who are still my agents to this day, 15 years later, were like, no, it will make you more interesting. It'll make you more exciting. And besides, there are always studios in Paris. And so they were the agents I signed with. My career exploded like immediately after signing with them. And for many years, when I'd be in Paris for Fashion Week, I would be doing auditions, and I would be doing jobs in studios there and bringing microphones. And my bringing microphones to Paris is what led me to start my podcast and my website, which is what led me to where I am now, doing the stream. So it's like that was the beginning. That was the germination of so much that's come to pass 15 years later. So it's a really interesting moment.
Yeah, I wish I could say I planned that, but I mean, I plan on you being interesting, is what I would say. It's a safe bet.
Well.
But it's funny, when I signed up with these folks at PM, it was the same thing. It wasn't Fashion Week for me, because look at me. But
you don't get to say that anymore with the way you're looking, Steve. You don't get to go being that way. You look like you could be. But yeah, sorry.
It was San Diego Comic-Con for me. Yeah. I was like, no matter what job I'm doing, like, you got to know that I'm going to be gone for San Diego and New York Comic-Con every year, because this is, I have to be there. Right. And actually on that topic, not 15 years ago, but this is thanks to the world. My first year not going to San Diego Comic-Con, since I was 12. So this would have been my 23rd year.
Wow.
And I can't say I didn't mind having the week off from madness, but I also would have liked having an unbroken streak. So, you know.
You know what? This doesn't count. It still will be considered unbroken, even if it doesn't count. They had to break.
I mean, 15 years ago, I was in college, man, getting ready to fly across the country and live in Russia. So, if you want to talk about an interesting cultural shift in terms of how people imbibe spirits, it was a wild one. You know, within a month of getting there, it was my host mother's 51st birthday, and it is considered bad luck, at least at that point, with who I was staying with, to not finish a bottle of vodka once you've opened it. So I barely speak Russian, and here she is celebrating her 51st birthday, falling over chairs, and it ends up just being me and like a 75-year-old woman having to finish this bottle of vodka at like 1 in. I can barely speak Russian at that time, but I'm also extremely competitive and didn't want to be beaten. So I had to finish that bottle.
Of course. So did your Russian get better or worse as the bottle got less and less? So
now, at that point, it just went from shitty to laughably bad. But now, because it's in the back of my mind, and I don't use it actively nearly enough, it's 13 years ago now, or almost, that I came back. More than that, God. Anyway, if I have a couple of drinks now, it's better because I'm less nervous about it.
I'm this way with French. I speak French well, but a few drinks in me, and I'm like, I'm unbelievable. I'm just flying through. So I hear you.
And you know, my boyfriend being from South Jersey, it's questionable how much English he speaks. So when the Russian comes out, it's just, you know, we're in a dark place. But that said, so 15 years ago, that's when this broadly agave that would be in this bottle would have started to come to life. So let's actually sample the bottle. Let's see who's got the juice. Here I am hitting the title. Let's have some spirits here. I showed the bottle. As I said, again, this is from Netta, PM Spirits Import. We're doing the Biquiche, and we're going to drink it.
Okay, hold on. I don't have a small enough glass. Okay. It's got a great nose.
Oh, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to let you talk first, but I have opinions. And then I would only send folks things I like, so there's that. But
it's really good. Wait. The nose is light and a little sweet even.
It is unquestionably a little sweet. And I think you'll find that I think you'll find that when you taste as well.
It is delicious and sweet, and then has this very nice, like smoky, like backlash that gets you. That's the smoke hits you after the sweet. It's delicious.
I was very happy with it, and I'm also known for having a smoky backlash myself. So I think that's why I love. To me, this is what's cool about agave. So I'm really glad you enjoyed it, and yeah, the flavor. I think you can have so much more complexity out of this than well, look, I shouldn't say so much more. A unique complexity out of this than something like tequila, which is sort of all trying to be the best version of the same thing. You know, and here you can just have so much more of this. You get like that smokiness. You get, I think, a little bit of cocoa, something baking like influence on the back. But I love that every bottle and every blend of agave is going to be different. If you turn the bottle around,
it's so good. It's so smooth initially. And then like then it just sort of bites you, and that sweet hits you, and then the smoke. Yum. Okay, turned it around.
Well, I'm just going to say, this is the other cool thing about these and everything that PM imports, you know, well, it's a lot about authenticity. And this is what came up in my previous interview. If there was a buzzword for my previous interview with Dan Housen, it was authenticity. Here it's maturation. but we're still giving you that. You know, there's no deception. We want to give people everything they could possibly ask about a spirit on the back or on the label. So our labels are super honest, and this to me is the information I love to see in a bottle, because you and I know from being on the back end, there's so much more than just matching something up and boiling it and putting it in a bottle. Like, everything matters. And the key to me, you know, just like we've talked about these long journeys we've had, hypothetically, it should be humanizing us to people. I think that's what PM Spirits tries to do. I know that they work with folks, like these are real farmers that are often just making things at first for their own families. And the last thing I want to say about the spirits that we're tasting that I think is really special is, like, it does make a difference drinking these things. I think people in America, we become detached from producers, but when you're working with small batch producers, you know, buying you know, 2 or 5 or a couple batches from them every year, like, that can support their family. That's game changing for them. And so the other reason I like getting on these talks and telling our stories and letting folks know sort of the richness in our lives and in our journeys is that every time you open a bottle, you know, there's a journey there. If it's made by a real person, you know, I'm not talking about factory distillation, but as much as we love what we do, as much as I'm invested in everything I write, let's say 99% of things I write, and there's always that 1% of I would like to eat food. And as much as you're invested in all these things, we spent this time talking about these crafts and passions that we're incredibly, incredibly in love with. That's what's in these bottles. You know, when you step outside the factory, this is everything. This is the life and the sweat and the passion of these folks. So I think on a meta level, and I rarely, if ever, say on a meta level, but there's no one here to like frame me in the face for being pretentious. You know, we're talking about our stories, and we're talking about the stories of these producers, and I think that's really, really special, because it's easy to just go to a store and think, you know, it's been a week, I need a drink, and that's totally fair. We've all had those weeks. But I think it's a bonus when you know, and through this bottle, you know, you're basically looking at a little tiny wormhole to someone who is busting their ass and putting their real love and passion into that so you can have that drink. And I think it's easy to get away from that. But as much as we've talked about caring what we love to do, these are folks that care just as much or more about what they do. And so by drinking this, I think we can celebrate all those things.
This so closely relates to what I am doing right now. No, in all seriousness, I can't even stand it. One of the features that I regularly do in my stream is I bring global independent designers on to the stream. And we do studio shows, we do studio tours. And the purpose is that these are incredibly talented, small, emerging designers, or established, but small house designers who are known within a certain set. But I don't know exactly how they would be found in a world where you're just shopping fast fashion. And when you're someone who actually wants to be introduced to something special and who wants to be connected with the people who produce what you want to consume, and when you want to actually have a connection with where your stuff comes from and who is making your stuff and how it's informed and why it comes out the way it comes out, getting to establish a relationship between the consumer and the designer and putting them together is like a gift. I mean, you become a connector. Seriously. But what you are doing and what you are doing with this stream, it's the same thing. I mean, you're introducing me. I never would have known Netta. So thank you. And I would never know about the background of Netta. Well, much like what I'm doing. I love that.
I'm happy to do it. And we have rambled on, but that's exciting for me. So I'm going to bring it around and thank you for coming on. I mean, we can talk, we can have you back, we can talk again. But thank you, Steve Orlando, Who's Got the Juice, PM Spirits, writer of comics, Jen Cohn, eccentric hyphenate. Thank you for being here. We couldn't appreciate it more.
Mwah. Thank you so much. Fun.